Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 64 in the book of Revelation. We've been learning about the great city of Babylon, and I'm going to title today, Babylon, We Found Blood. So Babylon is a city, perhaps, but certainly it's a system that leaves God out. It's a religious system that leaves God out, representing maybe the world religions. It's also an economic system that leaves God out. And finally, and here described, is the destruction of Babylon. Listen, and this is chapter 18. I'm going to start in verse 10. Alas, alas, you great city, you mighty city Babylon, for in a single hour your judgment has come. And the merchants of the earth weep and mourn for her. No one buys their cargo anymore. Cargo of gold, silver, jewels, pearls, fine linen, purple cloth, silk, scarlet cloth, and all kinds of scented wood, and all kinds of ivory, and all kinds of costly wood, bronze, iron, and marble, cinnamon, spice, incense, myrrh, frankincense, wine, oil, wheat, cattle, and sheep, horses and chariots, and, get this, slaves, that is, human souls. So let me just comment here for a second. So her judgment has been sudden and quick, and merchants and later here seamen who are associated with the profit of her trade in precious metals and gems and clothing, and spices and food and weapons, and most concerningly in her cargo of men. The merchants participated and longed for the cargo of the souls of men. So they're participating in this as well. Verse 14, the fruit for which your soul longed for has gone from you, and all your delicacies and your splendors are lost to you, never to be found again. The merchants of these wares who gained wealth from her will stand far off in fear of her torment, weeping and mourning aloud. Alas, alas, for the great city that was clothed in fine linen, in purple and scarlet, adorned with gold, with jewels and with pearls. For in a single hour all this wealth has been laid waste. And all the shipmasters and seafaring men, sailors, and all whose trade is on the sea, stood far off and cried out as they saw the smoke of her burning. They didn't want to stand too close. What city was like the great city? And they threw dust on their heads as they wept, and they mourned, crying out, Alas, alas, for the great city where all who had the ships at sea grew rich by her wealth, for in a single hour she has been laid waste. So we're going to find two groups of people that stand watching the destruction of Babylon. They're weeping and mourning, at least one group. They're throwing dust on their heads. Who are they? Well, they're the merchants, they're the seamen. They're those who grew rich by her wealth. In a sense, they were participants and supporters and beneficiaries. And they know it, too, because they stand off in fear of her torment. They weep, nearby, but not too close, so they don't get caught up in her destruction. And then we find the other group. This is verse 20. This is my favorite verse of the chapter. Verse 20. Rejoice over her, O heaven, and you saints and apostles and prophets, for God has given judgment for you against her. So in this great chapter of mourning and loss, we find there's a group of people here, the saints and prophets and apostles, who are rejoicing. Heaven is rejoicing at the destruction of Babylon. This is where we get this mighty perspective. And then here's her destruction. Then a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, So will Babylon, the great city, be thrown down with violence and will be found no more. I just love that. What happens is she is thrown down with violence. And then here's practically what happens. The sound of the harpists and musicians and flute players and trumpeters will be heard in you no more. And craftsmen of many crafts will be found in you no more. And the sound of the mill will be heard in you no more. And the light of the lamp will shine in you no more. And the voice of the bridegroom and bride will be heard in you no more. For your merchants were the great ones of the earth, and all the nations were deceived by your sorcery. And in her was found the blood of the prophets and of the saints, and of all who have been slain on the earth. So gone are the musicians, gone are the craftsmen, gone are the producers, gone are those who make light, gone are the celebrations of weddings. She has deceived nations. So she does three things wrong. She deceives nations. She causes men to stumble in pride and profit, even in the slave trade, even in the souls of men. And here, blood is found. So we found weddings, we found musicians, we found bread makers, we found craftsmen, but we also found blood. We found slaves. We found the cargo of the souls of men. Make no mistake, Babylon the city, and Babylon the economic system, and Babylon the religious system has blood on her hands. So God's judgment is true. God's judgment is right, and at the right time. The blood of the martyrs condemn her. So the call here is to be part of the group. So most of this chapter is about weeping and mourning and wailing of the bad guys that are mourning the loss of Babylon. But then there's this small group, a group that says, "Rejoice over her, O heaven, and you saints and apostles and prophets, for God has given judgment for you against her." So let's be part of that group, shall we? So there's this religious system that leaves God out, a behavior system that leaves God out, a moral system that leaves God out, and an economic system that leaves God out. It was prophesied back in chapter 14. Fallen is Babylon. And here we find it completed now. And let's rejoice. Why are we rejoicing? Well, as soon as we turn the page, and please come back tomorrow, in chapter 19, we're done with chapter 18 here. In chapter 19, Jesus comes back. That certainly has to be good. I'll see you then. Thanks for listening.